What do people need to stop spending their time on?
Before we go to that question, I'll add one
Yeah.
extra thing onto that.
Okay.
I believe people aren't paying themselves enough.
Yep.
And they are mostly doing that because in most cases that I'm looking at, there's not enough profit margin in the business.
Yes.
So people should spend less on tools, pay themselves more, and that will show them that they're not making as much profit as they think.
You
Um,
know the
okay.
saying, a dollar saved is a dollar earned.
Yep.
That's misleading on a business front, because if you're making a 10% profit margin of actual profit, then a dollar saved is the same as $10 earned in sales. And that's where the thing is, the word earned in business, are we talking profit or are we talking sales? So if you save $100, right, you would have to do a $1,000 job to get at a 10% profit margin to get that $100 into your back pocket. And a lot of people don't realize that. They don't realize how powerful saving money is in business. And that is often what is stopping them from paying themselves. And they think, oh, fantastic, I've won a $4,000 job. And then they go and spend $250 on something that, they think, oh, I've got heaps of profit from this $400,000 job. But if you don't know your profit margin because you're not tracking it and you're not truly paying yourself, then you might have wiped 80% of your profit from that job on one purchase and you thought you were fine.
That's exactly right. In one of my recent coaching calls with a customer, the whole coaching call was around two topics, and that was reviewing their insurance and aggregating any loans that they had, because they had quite a bit of, it was a big business, had quite a bit of debt, and their insurance they hadn't looked at in a couple of years. That one call, I forget the exact number that he told me, but it was over 5,000 a year that call saved him after
Wow.
2 hours of work. And I was trying, or I tried to get across to him, and I share that story because when are you going to earn $5,000 in 2 hours of work in your business? It's not possible.
No.
And the second part that I put to him is that type of review on those expenses needs to be more frequent. So most people will look at it maybe once a year. If you're in business and you've got big expenses, you need to be looking at that monthly, ideally, if not quarterly at the longest.
We found ourselves recently in a bit of trouble with this because and I want to do a podcast literally on insurance soon, and go really deep dive with a broker on it. And the reason is that we signed up with a brokerage 7 or 8 years ago, and in those 8 years, that brokerage was sold twice. So it was 3 different organisations, and we had 4 or 5 different brokers. Now, the first couple of years, the person that we actually chose was great, and we liked them. The next person was mediocre, the next person was mediocre, and they all were sort of mediocre. So we didn't realise, though, that because we hadn't really sat down with them and we just said, hey, look, we liked what we had last time, just keep doing it. We'd have a look at everything, but we hadn't been as tight with those numbers as possible. We really started thinking about our expenses and looking into that, and we're like, man, we spend a lot of money on insurance. Now, we have a lot of stuff, so we thought we're spending a lot of money because we have a lot of stuff, and it was $30,000 a year was what we were paying. It was more than that, actually. It was in the 30s. And we were like, okay, what can we reduce it to? And I was like, maybe I can reduce it $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Anyways, we worked with somebody who was really quite nitpicky, a new broker. It was $15,000 that we took off. And a lot of it was because we just worked out we don't even need to insure a bunch of stuff. Like, why am I insuring, say like a steel whippersnipper? Okay, you might go, it's $900. I don't want a steel whippersnipper stolen, so I'm going to get it insured. But then you realise that if you claim your $900, you're going to increase your insurance bill, and your excess might be $500 anyway.
And the additional insurance that you're paying is probably a year you're paying 900.
And so then you just end up not claiming. And we realised that over 5 years we'd had half a dozen things or whatever it was stolen that were less than $1,000. So let's just raise our excess to $1,000. And then we go, actually, if we raise our excess even more than that, I can't even remember what it's at now. We were exploring $2,000-$3,000 excess because we were like, hold on a second, that will save us $3,000 a year.
Yep.
Just put the $3,000 aside, have it always ready to go. And this was the type of conversation we had. So a really good broker actually was really helping us to save that money. And yeah, for us, it was about $15,000 a year. Now, it wasn't because we got $15,000 in better deals. It's because we just stopped insuring a bunch of stuff that we realized we were never going to claim on anyway. And what we have insured is like, if this warehouse goes up in flames, right, and we lose everything, we're going to be fine. Yeah, we'll have a I can't remember what the excess is. Let's call it 3,000 because I said that before. We'll have a $3,000 excess. But is that really a problem? If my entire warehouse goes up in flames, do I really care that I have to pay $3,000? No. It's like, I'm glad. Here, happily, you can take it. You know, I want all my stuff back. And that's for me. And I consider myself on the higher end of the spectrum of numbers-orientated people in the industry. And I just let that slip because I was just trusting brokers, ones that I hadn't even chosen because the business had been bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold, to just do what I wanted. But I'd never sat down and actually talked to those brokers. I'd never actually really worked out those numbers. And yeah, like we say, okay, $15,000 in profit at 10%, it's $150,000 in sales a year.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes straight in your pocket basically because it's just goes straight to the bottom line.
Yeah.
But with that story, there's two key components to that were probably overlooked, and it's probably everyone does it at some point, is number one, not understanding that you still need to manage your vendors. So anyone who you're hiring to do a service for you, you still need to manage them. The idea is that you don't need to manage them the same as you would an employee, but you still need to monitor if they're giving you the service that they promised and service that's providing you a value, which when businesses are sold, vendor businesses are sold, new people taken over, that can change very quickly, right? And then the other part of that I think generally people don't do a good job of, especially in this industry, is we book ourselves up so busy that we don't give ourselves the time to think about these things. And so the one thing that I told my client in this area was that he needs to block 1 day per quarter out completely from any work. It's still a work day, so he's away from his family. And on that day, he has a list of 5 to 7 things that he works through in order, which are these tasks that never get looked at. And the fact of having a specific time to do that and making sure that you follow your own rule will give you these benefits. But that is one thing that many people don't do. They don't have enough time for their bookkeeping, their scheduling, other admin tasks, all of this.
What's a sign, or what's some other signs that you see that someone's working too much?
Almost everyone I talk to is working too much because we all do that as entrepreneurs, I think. But I think, people only realize it when something comes to a head, whether they're sacrificing times with their family or their friends, or they have health complications. You see that often in the group. Guys will work themselves to the bone, solo for years, and to the point until they have an injury or something happen, and then they can't do it anymore. I think the realization often comes too late, but I think people who are in touch with their numbers are more likely to have success. So just looking at how many hours you're working a week is helpful. And I think you've mentioned on another podcast that you went to 4 days or 4.5 days a week.
Yeah.
That's something that I recommend to almost everyone, because inevitably during busy times in this industry, you're working 10 or longer hours a day. And if you're booking 5 days a week, you're going way over what's physically possible to be on a week, like just to continue 50 plus hours every week. For most people, it's not feasible.
When you talk about, there's a lot of subjects here. So the 4.5 day, we do a 9-day fortnight, right? We think that's essential because you will burn yourself out, and it forces you to make yourself run a better business. But physically speaking, it's hot. It's really hot and dry here in Perth. But you know, the heat is here in Perth. The rain is problems over east. Like you make a business that makes you. It forces you to make a business that's going to be prepared for bad weather anyway, because you'll have some flexibility.